This brings to order the public hearing, March 28, 2019, of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The minutes have already been approved for February at the work session. At this point, I'd like to address the adjournments of 3007, 3012, 3026, 3032. These applicants are requesting an adjournment. Can I get a motion?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Extensions.
Move we grant the extension of number 3023472 First Neck Lane.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And aye. All right. Pending cases, pending decisions. Number 3015, Nakmani.
Move we accept the decision of Adil Nakmani, 1471 Meadow Lane, as written.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? On the matter of 3029, Anthony Albanese.
I move we accept the decision of Anthony Albanese, 64 Almond Street, as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Oops, wow. On the matter of 3018, James Gleason.
I move we accept the decision of James Gleason, 128 Halsey Street, as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Gil asked me if I could, he wasn't going to be here, so he asked me if I could pick up a copy of the decision. I told him I charged my...
James Gleason, right?
You gotta give him one.
Now move to pending cases, 3030, Redcraft LLC.
Good evening for the applicant, John Bennett, and Perry Gio, the landscape architect, is here. This is an application for relief in order to have a tennis court constructed on this 3-acre lot in the physical front yard. So it's we're proposing to construct a lot on the northwest portion of the subject property. The property is somewhat unusual in shape, but it is a conforming lot in terms of area. It's in the R120 zone, so it does conform. So we need relief under 116A11A and 169A3 to construct the court. We're proposing to locate the court 90 feet from Captain's Neck Lane, which is a conforming setback for an accessory structure in the R120 zone, and 119 feet from Ox Pasture Road, which is almost, I guess that's, what is that? It's over 20 feet more than the required minimum front yard setback. So we do comply with the dimensional requirements for accessory structures, but given the shape of the property and the existing structures on the property, there's no conforming location where a court can be located. So that's what we're here for. I thought it might be interesting for the board to take a look at, and I'll just run through these quickly, some of the way that the board has handled other matters in the immediate vicinity. And what we've done is we have an aerial. Let me give one of these to Wayne. This should be enough for Wayne. I still want to give up my last one. But, so I have an aerial photograph of the neighborhood. Here's the, you have an aerial that's in the application, but then there's another aerial that shows. What it does is it collects cases in the vicinity. So the subject property is right here, 420 Ox
Oh, sure.
Pasture. It's 3 acres. At 306 Ox Pasture, 2 lots east of the subject property. Oh, and before I forget, I'm sorry, we do have a letter of support from the neighbor due east, Linda Huber at 390 Ox Pasture, stating that she has no objection to the application. So she's the neighbor to the east. But at 306 Ox Pasture, 2 lots east of the subject property, this board granted relief for TC within the front yard located 40 feet from Ox Pasture. You can see it on the aerial. We're proposed to be 119 feet from Ox Pasture and 90 feet from Captain's Neck. At 295 Ox Pasture, which is 4 lots down and across the street, the board granted relief to allow a tennis court within a front yard 30 feet from Halsey Neck Lane. Now, I looked at those for full disclosure. I looked at the 2 of these. The 295 Ox Pasture, Mr. Geider cast a no vote on that one.
It was a long time ago, John. It's about 30 years ago.
Yeah, and the 40 feet, but you did vote, Kevin, for the one at 306 Ox Pasture. I did note, and I just, you can throw something at me, I always have to bring this up. Harry Marmion voted yes on both of them. But in all fairness, I don't think he ever saw a tennis court variance.
That he didn't like.
That he didn't like being the head of the U.S. Tennis Association. At 292 Ox Pasture, this is a fairly recent grant. There was permitted construction of a tennis court 91.9 feet from Halsey Neck Lane and 40 feet from Ox Pasture. And we've attached all those decisions. Now, the only reason I bring these to your attention is that I think this case is an even more compelling case for a court because we do meet all the dimensional setbacks. What we'd like to do is to put the court, and Perry can talk about these walls if you'd like, or if he'd like, but we're handing out just another copy of the variance which shows the location of the court. And our idea, I know we have to go to the planning board, and we're going to ask the planning board, and they may say yes or no if your folks are willing to grant this. We're going to ask the tennis court, rather the planning board, if they'll allow us not to sink it because there are these old estate, beautiful brick walls on the property, which we think creates sort of a superior shielding, but that's really up to them. But in any event, we want to use
Got some.
these brick walls, existing brick walls, which will encompass most of the tennis court, unless the planning board tells us to sink it, and then we'll do that.
Tom, what were the brick walls for?
I don't know. You know what? At first I asked Perry whether or not they were for a tennis court, but they don't line up. So there's gardens there or something?
Gardens.
Perry, there were gardens?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Like a winter like greenhouse structure that would be up against it.
When I first saw them, and I saw that they were almost the dimension of a tennis court, I said, oh, maybe I have an argument that there was a tennis court there at one time, but they don't
Cold frames.
They don't line up. So I don't think there was never a tennis
It
court.
was cold frames.
It was a cold frames. Okay.
The
so-
backdrop for a cold frame.
Oh, okay. But they're wonderful and ornate. And the planning board will either let us put them there or they won't. and maintain them or not. And they may just tell them to take us down and sink it. But that's not really before you. I just wanted to let you know that that's.
These walls are approximately 7 foot 6 inches. That's what your diagram or photograph said.
The vast majority of them are 7 feet 6, and then they scoop up at the ends in 3 locations. I mean, it's clear, we've cited the tennis court in between the walls. That's how these numbers, setback numbers, have gotten to that.
It actually
We're going to seal the tennis court.
Yes, it actually works to the south. It's 38 feet instead of 35, so it actually works a little bit to the advantage of the neighbors to the south.
The wall's at 38.
The wall's at 38.
And the setback's 35.
The setback's 35. But again, that's our request. It's not a necessary part of the application. I give it to you more for informational purposes, because the zoning board, the architectural review board is either going to tell us to take those walls down and sink it, or maybe they'll allow us to preserve them, but.
But the tennis court's going inside the existing walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's 115 feet in length.
Yeah, we had to
150.
shorten it 5 feet, but it will work.
Well, we shortened it 5 feet to keep it in the wall, keep it in the walls. And it's nice because it was less, it's not really less free, well, I guess, yes and no. We're at 100 and almost 120 feet from Ox Pasture anyway, so, but it worked out, so we shortened it that way. So we think this is a good application. It's the typical situation where you have front yards, but you meet the accessory setback. It's a large lot. I'm not trying to shoehorn anything in here. I know there was a letter of opposition from the Friedmans, who are very, very nice folks. They're here this evening, opposing it. I just want to point out a couple of things. The Friedmans are owner of a non-conforming lot that's 1 acre in size, and their property is improved with a tennis court in the rear. My guess is that the court was built, I think the court was built around 1990, which is just on the cusp of when the zoning code was changed, so that coverage, the entire surface of the tennis court was counted into the coverage, as opposed to, remember, that used to be half. Tennis court used to be half the coverage. Half the coverage of the tennis court would go towards the lot coverage, so it's in all likelihood a non-conforming court. It does sit right on my client's bedrooms are on the south side of the property into the west, so it does abut closely the the bedrooms in the client's house, but it is what it is. But that's where it is. I know one of the things that the Friedmans said in their letters was that they had sought variance approval from this board and had been denied, but we do have those prior denials here, and they were, I would just respectfully characterize them as quite a bit more aggressive as this than this application. Obviously, there was a conforming location for the court as shown by the as-built situation, and those variances, they wanted relief down to 15 feet in one case and 25 feet in another. So I'll give you those just for the purposes of examining them and seeing that I don't think the fact that the Friedmans were denied these somewhat enthusiastic applications bears at all on this application, which is for a 3-acre lot, not a 1-acre lot, and meets all of the accessory setbacks. The Friedman suggests an alternate location for the construction of the tennis court on the property, but that would require a variance itself and would require the removal, or we would have to demolish the garage on the property, which we think would be not a viable alternative. So given the fact that there are courts in the area, this is hardly going to work any change to the character of the neighborhood. And again, it's within the required setbacks. I note there was, in terms of the general thinking on this, I don't know where it's gone. It hasn't passed, but I know there was some talk amongst the trustees about when you have this sort of corner lot situation, giving some automatic relief. I don't know where that's gone, but in any event, it is, I think what gave rise to it is the fact that this board has been fairly understanding of situations such as we presented to the board. So I think it's a good baseline for the board's prior activity on applications like this. I think there's no damage or no to the neighborhood. It's a common accessory structure. You're granted quite a bit of relief in this area, and we'd ask you to do the same for us, or for my client, I should say. That's about all I have, unless there are any questions. Or Perry, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you did.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, Perry.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly, that's what we're here for.
So it's possible the ARB or planning board would ask you to remove those brick walls?
I don't know. We're going to make the request that we could leave them there. I don't think that the village code, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that the village code requires courts to be sunken. I think, and I could very well be wrong, I think it's just their policy, which makes sense, I understand it. We have these big walls, they'll do quite a bit towards sound attenuation, but again, we're going to ask them if we can leave the walls. If they say no, we want the courts sunk, so we'll have to take them down. Because it'll undermine the walls. That's the problem.
My question speaks to the possibility of them asking you to remove the northern brick wall, in which case you could move the tennis court north a little bit,
If we
away from the Freedman's property,
we can do that.
if
Sure.
they say.
Yeah, sure, we could do that. We could do that. We could move it 20 feet.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, if that's what.
Anything else on the board?
I can just add two things. One is the code does not require the court to be sunk. It does require that the planning board review a landscape plan for the purpose of screening the court from the public street as well as adjoining properties. It's my understanding that has become a policy of the planning board, and it's certainly worthwhile. So, but it's not the statute, and there's no variance being requested to do otherwise. The second thing, Mr. Bennett mentioned a proposed amendment to the code. This board is aware of it, actually gave the Board of Trustees their recommendations, and the village board did adopt an amendment to the code, but removed the portion that had to do with corner lots.
Oh, okay, so there we go.
So
What do they do for ocean, or
for waterfront properties,
waterfront properties? So there we
that
go.
was amended.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't aware of that, but thank
So
you.
the corner lot thing is still an issue here for this board to
Okay. Oh, yeah, I
weigh
wasn't
and decide.
suggesting you didn't have to look at it. If, if
Yeah, I wrote something up.
If the board's preference were that we were to affirmatively say that we'll move the court to the 90-foot setback, which would necessitate the removal of the wall, then we'll do that. I mean, if this board feels
It's 119 now.
119, so we would move it to 90, because that's the minimum setback.
It's not so
Well, I
much
haven't
30
seen
feet
the-
more.
Is the wall a plus, for the community and the owners? or not?
The wall's it's pretty neat.
So-
From the house, it's the same old
So it's
brick.
worth retaining, you think? Yes.
We wouldn't be making the argument if we didn't think that the wall
Yeah.
was a nice thing.
Worth retaining wall.
And it also has the effect of some sound attenuation, and it does sort of add to the sense of place. I'd hate to be in a position where, for some reason, one or the other board wants it to stay, but I guess you could require us to move it unless one of the other board wants it to stay there. I don't know. whatever.
Seems like it should, if the wall is attractive and such, I think it should stay where it is, my opinion. But if somebody makes you take down the wall, I'm wondering if the Friedmans would be pleased if it were moved north a bit, and would it affect you negatively?
My concern is getting sort of ping pong, so it would be possible to write a decision that said if one of the other boards had no objection to the removal of the wall, then we'll place it at 90 feet. I don't want to be
In other words, you want a
piggish about
decision
it.
that stays at 119 feet, but if another board requires that the north wall be torn down, you could move it to 90 feet.
Yeah, or the court be sunken, then I'll move it down. I don't want to stand on ceremony if, I mean, we just thought it's a nice feature to retain.
If it has to be sunken, does that affect the wall?
Yeah, it's going to, well, you know.
Yeah. Did you see the picture of the wall? There's these little shots?
Yes,
Can you just state
very
names?
close there at the north end.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the north end, yes. We'd leave it at the south
There's a
end.
couple of shots
yeah,
there. You can have that.
Very estate-like.
Their date from the house. We went into this thinking the tennis court, that it fit with, at 115 feet, that we'd use that to place the tennis court.
Well, I think that's fine. I'm just saying if they make you rip down the wall, and I don't know why they would.
Well, the only
If they make
concern-
us sink the court, then the wall needs to come down.
Or if they make.
That's it. That's it.
But the ARB may want us to keep it. It's,
The ARB
yeah.
for tennis court?
Oh, no.
Planning
No,
board.
just the idea of the wall.
Oh, that's right. There's
That's
no
what the planning
ARB.
board.
No, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
There's
ARB.
no ARB jurisdiction. I forgot. I'm sorry.
So why don't we hear from the neighbors?
Good evening, I'm Alan Friedman. My wife Sandra and I, as was mentioned by, before, we live right next door to the court. We're responding to our neighbor Redcraft residing at 420 Ox Pasture Road, who has applied for a variance in order to construct a tennis court in the front yard of his property. We have several issues in regard to his application which we'd like to share with you. We've resided at 254 Captain's Neck Lane for nearly 40 years, and I've raised 4 children here. About 25 years ago, we decided to construct a tennis court on our property. And in order to do so without a variance, because we had applied for a variance, because a swimming pool was where the court was going to go, and if we obtained a variance, we could have squeezed the court in at 90-degree angle to where it is now. But we lost 3-2, and we demolished the existing pool to allow for a space to permit us to construct a court without a variance. In doing so, we voluntarily sank the court 4 feet, put about 12 trees around the court, and built a new pool in another location on our property. Some of our objections to the construction of a possible new tennis court on the northwest portion of our neighbor's property includes our bedroom is only 55 feet from the proposed tennis court and would be subjected to noise from the court, especially in early mornings and early evenings. Errant tennis balls could land on our property, causing potential damage at any given time. Tennis balls could also clear the property line and travel onto Captain's Neck Lane, potentially injuring pedestrians, runners, children, bikers, and vehicles. In addition, a tennis court so close to our bedroom will cause a decrease in the financial value of our property. At present, there are few tennis courts in the front yards of the village, and to set this precedent changes the dynamics of this lovely, quiet neighborhood. We do not want any adverse effects on the physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood. There are other options which Redcraft can have and construct a court on the northeast section of the property. They have 3.3 acres. Given that the property is over 3 acres, we feel the new location for this court is in the northeast section. I have a drawing of the proposed. It would require removal of the garage. The garage is set on a concrete base and could probably be lifted and moved to another area adjacent to the house. At this location, which is next to a road, Mrs. Huber had written a letter saying that she was not opposed to the court, but there is a road between her property and the court, and the proposed property. And we feel that this location in the northeast corner will not affect the character of the neighborhood. And to accommodate our needs as stated above, we did demolish a pool in order to construct a tennis court without a variance, and then built a pool in another location.
Sir, on number 1, you say your bedroom is 55 feet? It seems to be 65 feet.
We went over that with the building inspector, and that
Well,
was
I'm
the...
just adding here with
Yeah.
the surveys, 38 and 27, 65. And second, tennis balls landing on Captain's Neck Lane, well, I don't know how far, 90 feet away would be
Well, Aaron, tennis...
terrible errant shot. They shouldn't play tennis if that happened.
Well,
That's not going to happen. And even if it does happen, I doubt if it's going to cause mayhem. But, okay. I note that your tennis court is 30 foot off the line and theirs is 38. So,
our court has been there for 25 years without a single complaint. Neither neighbor to either side has a tennis court. We play tennis. We sank it 4 feet voluntarily before the village requested people sink the courts in order to attenuate some of the sound.
so you foresee a lot of complaints emanating from this proposed?
Well, I think a court in the front yard, right adjacent to Captain's Neck Lane, is unnecessary. Putting it on the other side of the property, it hides it from view, so to speak.
But there are courts in this neighborhood that are near the road.
There is one
Even nearer
south
than
of
this
us,
one is.
but that's been there for over 50 years.
One on the opposite, on the corresponding corner, 1 block down on Halsey Neck in Ox Pasture. Almost the same situation. The shape of the lot puts them in a spot that's quite difficult to build a tennis court away from the road.
Mr. Friedman, would the proposal that you've drawn there, would that require a variance as well?
I don't think so. It's still,
Require front yard variance.
It would be in the front yard, wouldn't it?
it would be in the front yard.
Still in the
Well,
front yard.
any
So a
court they put
variance
in
would
is
be-
in the front yard, because
Yeah.
the house is set so far back.
And what do you think about these walls?
I think they're a danger. I would be afraid to play tennis on a court with a brick wall, backing up for a lob. You're taking your life in your hands. Probably ought to wear a helmet at the same time. It's beautiful. There's a garden between the two walls, which they're going to demolish.
Can I
Well,
just
if you
say,
back up for a lob in a sunken tennis court, what could happen to you? You could hurt
Ours
yourself.
has an embankment. That's not, I don't think that's an issue. Yeah, with grass embankment.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record?
I'm Sandra Friedman, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I think the thing that, it's a hardship for us personally, because the noise from the court will be, no matter what they do, very close to our bedroom. And people play tennis early in the day and late in the day. And that's really a hardship for us. And it doesn't have to be there. And if there's an alternative, that would be, I think, a relief for us. The other issues about other courts in the area, I think this gives the go-ahead to even have more of them. I mean, there's another house across the street that I know went for a variance a long time ago, and it was denied because it was a front yard, right?
Yeah.
And I think if this goes by, they'd probably go for that again. I understand there is some, but it's going to be an allowance to say to anybody, well, go for that. It does add value to a property. We know that. I just think this is a large property, and there is another option, and we did that with our property. It was a cost to us, and it was a nuisance to us, but we did it. And also, our neighbor bought his house knowing that our court was already there, so it had nothing to do with his bedrooms or anything like that. That was his choice. That court was there before he bought the house. And we've tried to be respectful of the whole area. And now this is a real problem for us. And we'd like you to consider that.
Ma'am, can I ask you, what exists, I see the surveys, both surveys and the ones you submit indicate there's a hedge between your property lines and this proposed location. Can you tell me what kind of hedge and
It's privet.
approximately, how big is it?
It's about 10 feet high
The one between the two houses?
between the two properties.
Right.
It's actually around the whole property.
Yeah.
And they also show a hedge along Captain's Neck.
Yes.
That's correct.
That's about the same size?
That's same size.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak on this matter?
I just wanted to note that the alternate location would
John.
require, I'm sorry, John, the alternate location would require relief, to be in the front yard as well, the location proposed by the Friedmans.
Would it require a side yard variance as well, or could it
Yeah,
fit?
probably would, because it's 35 now is the, I don't know how you would get that in there. You'd have to remove the garage. I don't think there's any real need to do that, and to force us to do that. And then we have to be 35 feet plus the 50, and it would be, I mean, right on top of the house, if it could even fit there. Let me see. You figure, okay, this is 53 feet, so 60, this has to be 35 feet over. Yeah, you'd probably be looking for some side yard relief as well.
And where might the applicant put the garage if it had to be moved? Would it not be put where the tennis court is, more or less, and therefore have lights on the Friedmans and an exhaust and everything else?
The building inspector drew this
Excuse me,
for
I
us.
asked the question.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is to scale, I don't know, but if you seem for the purposes of argument it is the tennis court is right.
Yeah, it's the same size as this.
Yeah, okay, well, you still need relief for it, and it requires us to remove a garage, but I don't think there's any need for it. This is very similar to relief that's been granted in the past.
Where is the garage likely to go if it would be moved?
I'd still need relief for the garage as well here. I guess it would have to go over here, it would have to be behind somewhere in here, and then we'd have to redo the entire
But it could be
landscape.
closer to the property line, probably.
It could be closer to the property line, well, it could be closer to the, yes, it could be a lot further. It could be put back here, all the way back here. You could put the garage as a matter of right, 30 feet from here. It seems like really twisting the property into a pretzel for
We're
no.
going to get to it then. You have to go through the
Sir,
process
sir,
to get to
Mr.
it.
Friedman.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Bennett now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't think it's a viable or a reasonable, I mean, anything can be put anywhere, moved around, but I don't think it would be a reasonable request to ask the owner to essentially reorient the entire property.
Okay, let me ask you this. If they make you take the walls down, would you have to come before this board again?
If they make us take the walls down,
And you decide to move it anywhere?
if the walls are not valuable to anybody, we can move it closer to ox pasture, and we'll give them another 15 feet or so.
They have not mentioned any positive attitude towards that proposal.
You know,
Well, can we write the decision so it puts in both,
You get relief.
so you don't have to come back?
Change the setbacks.
5 feet away.
I'm sorry. Well, it would, if it's
Get
35,
another 21 feet.
you'd get another, 21? Well, you gotta hold 35, right? So that's
almost
3. No, I'd move it,
If you move it to 90, the difference between 111 and 90 is 21.
Yeah,
So,
almost 22 feet, yeah.
yeah, so you add that to the 65 feet, that's about 80-some feet
65. Oh,
separation.
From
their house.
From the bedrooms, I'm
Bedroom.
sorry. Oh, I see, yeah.
However, the brick walls are a plus.
Yeah, so, I mean,
They're a big signature of the property.
Sure.
They kind of, they're consistent with the house. I mean, the walls are beautiful.
They're very nice.
Wayne, can we write the decision so it includes both possibilities?
Oh, absolutely, you can write it assuming that all the standards are met.
Okay.
Yeah, just so if it turns out the wall has to go and we can move it to the 90, we don't have to come back here.
Anybody else like to speak to this? Do we have a motion to?
Did Mr. Friedman, did you want to say
You want to say
anything more?
more, sir? Do we have a motion to close this for decision?
Move we close this application.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Jesus. Moving on to new cases, we have 3031 SL2 405 LLC. Got one stamped?
Here's one you can stamp.
Jim Walker from InterScience on behalf of SL2405 LLC. I spoke to Mr. Voorhees yesterday, and he gave me some new directives which are not shown on those plans, so you're going to need to hold this project over for another meeting. The plans that I have provided to you are a result of the Department of the Army and the Board of Trustees of the Trustees and Freeholders of the Town of Southampton. Basically, the town has adopted new regulations where docks are required to be 3 feet above the grade of vegetated tidal wetlands, measured to the top of the deck. So those plans that you have in front of you are correct and reflect the new Blue Book regulations from the town. The Army Corps of Engineers requires that docks are 4.5 feet above grade as measured to the bottom of the girders. So there's a discrepancy between the federal and the town directives, but those plans accurately show the town directives. When I spoke to Chick Voorhees yesterday, he asked if the
Jim,
dinghies...
before you go too far, did you get a copy of his report?
No, but
So that might help you.
I have a feeling I know most of what it says. Chick said he was probably not going to make it tonight and wanted to review the village directives with me over the phone. And the gist of it is, I believe he wants the kayak rack moved landward. That's a reasonable request, so we'll move the kayak rack landward. The idea would be to disturb wetlands vegetation less. So that's fine. There's an existing dock there. This property was owned by Havemeyers, and it had New York State DEC permits and Board of Trustees permits.
Are those still valid?
What's that?
Are they still valid, or is that they're all?
They're still valid, but the dock fails to meet the federal criteria, which is we have to be off the property line 15 feet to meet the federal criteria. The dock that's there is 10 feet off the property line, which reflects the town criteria. That particular dock does not have an Army Corps permit. It does not extend really into the water. So we're proposing a dock that goes into the water a short distance, and we need to be at 15 feet. So I explained that to Mr. Voorhees, and he appeared to accept it, that would be fine. So we can't take out the old dock and put in a new dock in the same exact location. We have to meet the federal criteria. The other overriding factor with this particular dock is this dock extends 1/3 of the way into the water. That's a dug ditch. I don't know when it was dug. It doesn't really matter. From one side to the other, it's a pretty short distance. We go 12 feet out into the water. The ditch is 36 feet wide. We're allowed to go 1/3 of the way across. And the dock is what we would call a shallow water dock. It does not have a float. It doesn't have a boat, doesn't have mooring piles, doesn't have any of that stuff. Instead, what we do with this type of application is show a dock that was first used in Sag Pond, and it has what's called a drop platform. You go out to the end, and you have a little step down, and there's a drop platform that makes it easy to launch a kayak or a canoe. That's basically the whole gist of the application. So I would ask the board to hold the application over till next month, and we'll give you new plans to meet the review document from Nelson Pope and Voorhees.
Jim, can I just ask you a question? So you're saying the existing dock has existing permits,
Yes.
but that dock doesn't meet Army Corps requirements? Or it doesn't have the Army Corps permit, so that's why you need to put in a new dock? Or you were proposing to put a new dock in?
The new dock is to replace an old dock. If you recall, you might be aware that town trustees scheduled public hearings and held
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
huge amount of meetings to ban CCA. At the particular time, Fred Havemeyer was a town trustee, so this dock was made of Port Orford cedar. Port Orford cedar is a building material that's used in national parks all across the country. It's not good in the water. The dock is shot. It's done. It's needs to be replaced. Since it never had an Army Corps permit, we need to get an Army Corps permit for the replacement dock. The replacement dock also goes out into the water and is more functional than the stair down that was permitted and built at this particular location. The stair down was something that was used by the DEC when there was shallow water. I think stairs down at the end of a dock tends to be not very practical, and they end up hating their dock. So we don't really propose stairs down at the end of a shallow water dock in any case anymore. Instead, we drop the platform, we put a little ladder down, the people can take their kayak out to the end, put it in the water, step on the ladder, and get into a kayak and go. That's basically the idea. Did I answer your question, Wayne?
You did, a little more than I expected, but, so the next question is, in your process here, are we the first agency, or do you have any other agency permits?
The village in this particular instance is way ahead of the ballgame. In other words, Board of Trustees have not issued a permit yet. I don't expect that I'll have a problem with the town trustees. New York State DEC has not issued a permit yet, and the Army Corps of Engineers has basically sent me a one-page letter acknowledging that I submitted an application. So the village is ahead of the curve.
So you have pending applications with all those
I
agencies?
have pending applications for the 4 typical dock permitting agencies.
But it's your belief that this new design, particular 15-foot setback, will meet their standards?
Yes. 1/3 across the waterway, drop platform typically used We got permits for this type of dock in Mill Creek, in Noyak, Sag Pond, Mecox Bay. Shallow water docks are used in freshwater ponds as well.
Anything else from the board?
No?
Anybody from the floor like to comment on this application? We get a motion to adjourn for all purposes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
We'll submit new plans reflective of the Nelson Pope and Voorhees review document.
Next on the agenda is case number 3033, Mercedes, I'm not sure. Mercedes Cunahan. For the applicant, yes.
Okay. Do I have to state my name and all my, Mercedes Cunahan. And I'm here about 21 Hillcrest Avenue.
Okay.
I have to apologize. Mr. Lemansky was supposed to be here, but just sent me a picture from St. John's, so he's not here, literally. He forgot about me. It's okay. He just texted me. I'm just trying to seek relief on my setbacks. Doing a project on Hillcrest, which you probably can see from North Sea Road. And it was my belief that I'm slightly in between codes, because when I went there, I'm new to this. This is like my first project. Kind of inherited this and decided to go for it. And I went down and I was in the village, and they were very helpful, and they were helping me through it. And I know the setbacks are the first thing that comes up. Somehow between that and this point, my setbacks are off by a couple feet on each side.
Sorry. Sorry, sir.
So I'm trying to seek relief on that. Basically, permission to construct 2,397 square feet, one or two-story single-family dwelling to the southern front setbacks of 20 feet where I need 25 feet is required, and total side yard setbacks of 24 feet where I need 32 is required, and the eastern side yard setbacks, I have 5.9 where I needed 15. Yeah, so we had put the foundation in right before it got cold. And it's my fault because we had the demo permit, everything was fine. I just didn't have my HERS rating because I thought if I said I was getting it paid for it, I was good. Put the foundation in, and now I guess the option is come here or cut off 8 feet of the foundation.
Where would you have to cut it off? On the south?
Well, they said either side, but I mean, if I had to do it, I would probably do it on the south side because it's like windows and it's the least part of the foundation, you know, and it's closest to the historic museum, which would save me it. I just really wasn't hoping not to because I already paid for it.
Does the foundation with the existing one-story frame residence, does that mirror what was there?
It mirrors exactly what was there. I got approved for it, yes.
And did you demolish that?
The old one, yes, because it was it was from 1930 something, and we got permission I did get the demo permit, and they said it was okay, but it's exactly this, exactly what was there,
Okay.
just better.
So the new house is going to be moved further from the northerly property line.
Yeah,
Before it was like 5.9, now it's going to be much more than that, right?
well, it would be at 5.9 because the foundation's already there, and the house would be going to the left, to the north.
So you're reconstructing what you demolished on the existing house?
Yes.
And the building department didn't tell you that you needed relief to do that? Because it is 5.9, and what about pyramid?
Everything is okay that way, pyramid-wise, because my foundation guy, who informed me that he went down there for this project more than he did for the ocean projects because of the way the hill is set up, because it goes so high, it was all, and spoke to everyone down there numerous times to make sure that everything was done correctly and safely. So
So right now, do you have a building permit?
if I have approval from you guys, I will have a building permit. Everything is done. I just needed to get relief
So
from
you
my
have no
setbacks.
building permit
Not at this
currently?
point, no, sir.
There's no work going on, right?
Absolutely not.
We've had a recent issue involving the pool, and I guess the back of the house in your case.
Okay.
If you have a doorway there, I imagine,
Yes.
you're concerned that doorway goes right out in 6 feet, it's a
6 feet to
step,
the-
so it's who knows what, 3 feet, that it's a little bit dangerous, could be.
So I can do a smaller pool with that
A
absolutely.
smaller pool would help.
Help me
plus-
too.
I think what happened with the last one is that they had an exit, but they also had a little walkway that made it so that you had to turn left
Okay.
to get out. In other words, you just don't run out the door and flop in the pool.
I hope not.
May be
'cause
dangerous.
I
Children
have little
might.
kids, so that would not be my intention. Yeah, well, it would be more advantageous for me to go with a smaller pool, so if that can help.
You only got 6 inches, right, to go to the,
6 inches?
you have 6 inches leeway. So
Yeah, yeah, it's,
You can move it
playing it
6
close,
inches,
you know?
and then if it were a little narrower, it might help. And if maybe you had on the steps going down there some little diversion,
Okay.
some little walkway and a
Mason,
little
I
fence or
have the
something.
mason, I have.
Anything.
I'll take any ideas.
Well, we just think it's dangerous that you fly out of the house and into the pool.
Absolutely. So can we I can do a smaller pool, would you prefer that, it's obviously would be fenced, would you prefer the extra fence around the pool too, or some type of masonry structure that would make it better?
Well,
Is the pool in already?
No,
Just a-
no, nothing, there's just a pile of
I
dirt.
don't even know where the door is.
But then don't you have room to move it closer to the,
If I do a smaller pool, can I go further back?
20-foot setback.
Okay, so it would just be smaller and give me more room.
Go back the other way by 4 feet, going north.
Yeah. And you mentioned the parking issue.
That, I don't know how that became the issue, because I gave them the 3Ds of the parking. That was asked early on, and it was 4 bedrooms, so I needed 3 parking spaces. But I guess because they kind of were okay with all my setbacks, and then it came that I needed 5 more feet. I think it's 5 more feet back.
4 parking spaces?
3.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
in order to accommodate, I don't mean.
Yeah,
4.
I'm sorry.
So I don't understand it. Are all the parking spaces on the property now?
Yes.
You're okay with that? You don't need a variance? Is that
I
right?
think Tin said I might because,
It says variance for 1 parking space for 1 of the 3 required off-street parking spaces, implying that you have room for 2.
but, okay. It was supposed to be 2 this way and then 1 that way on the diagram.
Looks like you have, because in the front it says 19.9, that's 2 spots.
It does look like it, but it should say it.
You don't.
You know,
19.9 is not wide enough. You need 10 feet each,
20 feet, in other words?
10 by 20, 10 by 19, 18, right? So you only have 19 feet to the front of the house from the property line.
I'm talking about that little L that's off the parking area.
Right, that comes in, goes to the right. That
19.9 feet.
missed it by that much.
19.9, though, is the dimension from the property line to
Oh, yeah,
the front of
yeah,
the
I
house,
see, I
not
see.
the dimension
Right,
of
you're
that
right.
parking area, which has to be much less than that.
Not the width of the parking area, no. Well, can you get 2, one behind the other, on the other part?
Well, that would take 2, wouldn't it?
It looks like that would take 2, and this would take 1.
But did the
He
building
says
department,
that's not going to take one unless there's a variance.
the building department raise any issues of pyramid? The fact that you demolished the existing house and you're now rebuilding that. So do you have any pictures of what did exist? And what is being replaced with?
I have a,
Because technically, without a building permit, that building was in a non-conforming location. And you had the right to reconstruct it 100% in that location. But once you demolished it and you did it without a permit, you
No.
wonder if that right remains.
I thought I had a demo permit. I have a demo, I had a. I have a
Demolition permit, but
demolition
not
permit.
a permit to reconstruct.
Right, that was where I thought framing
So we
was my
need to get more information from the building department on that to make sure that we're addressing all the required variances. Because there's definitely a pyramid issue on that side,
Which side?
the east side,
The east side?
5.9 feet.
But there was a pre-existing one.
Right, but we don't, all we have is a proposed plan here. I mean, it says existing, but nothing exists at this point.
So, let's try and map out what is needed as far as plans.
Okay.
Some matter addressing the pyramid law for the one-story and the two-story. Some consideration as to parking. And some consideration as to the exit to the pool. Anything else?
I think, the issue here is that you proceeded to do work, and arguably, one of the tests that you're supposed to demonstrate to the board is that you cannot comply or mitigate the need for the variances. And the variances you specifically requested are the side yard, total side yard, and the front yard variance. So arguably, you could have complied with that front yard setback in a different manner. The only problem is you proceeded, and it sounds like you're trying to express your hardship as you put the foundation in the ground without a permit.
I did, we had the demo permit. It's my fault, because I thought my demo permit, I didn't even think about it like that, and I had Mr. Pike.
So one of the things we need to look at is the character of the area. It would be important for you to show how the proposed setback is consistent perhaps with other properties in the neighborhood. So that's one of the tests this board has to apply, and we need that information in the file to show that going with a front yard setback of 19.9 feet is consistent with what is happening in the neighborhood.
And when I first went in with everything, everything that we did, even though we didn't do it correctly, obviously, is exactly what we presented. I didn't change I didn't change anything on my architectural plans at all. And I know that they said, Mercedes, you're in between codes. The codes for setbacks changed last year, and they were going to change, because when we first went in, the highlighted setbacks were right there, and then I had to go redo it to them because we had them to the original setbacks of last year's code. And so that was the issue. I just don't want anyone to think that we were trying to do anything off of what I
No, but
presented.
just so you know, the
Okay.
setback haven't changed for like 5 years. So the setback requirements have been in place for a while.
Okay.
So I think if you can get that information and get Mr. Lemansky in to assist and address those issues the board has raised, it would be very helpful, though.
Absolutely.
But it's very important that you get us information on the character of the neighborhood,
Okay.
just so that we have it in the file and we can show that your setbacks that you're proposing are consistent with what you see in the neighborhood.
And only in that neighborhood, not on the opposite side, like Woolley Street, just right up the street.
Yeah,
that-
right
You can
there.
go up the street or
Best
down
on
the street.
Hillcrest, because the lots are so small,
They're so small.
where you're gonna
And I-
get more.
Remember, I had two lots. I had 17 and 21 that were my grandparents, and I merged them.
If you can do that,
Just go up the street a little
yeah.
someday.
Take a ride and take a few pictures and then just check the, okay.
Yeah, and also just show parking where you can get 3 cars, in the outline of the car.
Would I bring that,
Should be able
the
to do
graph
that.
for that even with, if I'm off by a couple feet, like,
Well, you should,
That's what Steve can help you with.
yeah.
Try to, put it where you think you want it, and then see what the rules are, and,
okay,
Get past that.
okay.
okay. Is there any other comment from the board or the attorney? Is there anybody from the floor that'd like to comment? Okay, do you understand what we're asking, more
Absolutely.
or less?
Yes,
Okey doke.
to not show up without Steve, so he's gonna get it.
I think you got to go pick them up.
I'm gonna have to pick him up.
Okay, Queen.
Thank you.
We're going to adjourn this for all
Yes,
purposes,
may
right?
we have a motion in that
You have a motion to adjourn
direction?
this application.
Oh, I'm
You
listening.
want to say something?
No, would I be able to come next
Oh,
time?
yeah,
Do
sure.
I have to read it?
If we have a work session, is it the April 18th? If you could get something in by then, it'd be nice.
April
18th.
What?
18th.
April
I
18th.
don't know when it is.
Well,
I'll tell you in 2 seconds.
starts on a Monday.
Hang on.
Monday's the 15th, tax day, so it's
So the
16th.
meeting is on the 25th, so you need to have it in by the 16th of April.
it's the 16th. That would
That's
be
the
good
work
if we had it by then.
All right, I can come here.
If you get it in by the 16th, this board can
Ah.
review it and be prepared for the meeting on the 25th.
You can just bring it to the building department, or you can come to that meeting if you like.
I'll come to that
Can you
one
make the
too.
16th, just come back here
I'll come
on the
back.
25th.
Okay, thank you so
Whatever
much.
you have.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn this application for all purposes.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
An aye. Okay. Next is case number 3034, Captain's Neck Realty. Garage is the name of the house.
Yeah.
For the applicant.
Hi, good evening. My name is Frank Eisler. I'm a member of the firm of Smith, Finkelstein, Lumberg, Eisler, and Yakubowski, 456 Griffin Avenue in Riverhead. I represent the applicants. I would just like to briefly give you a picture and an explanation of our application, and then I have Mr. Keene and the architect here, and they're going to go into a little bit more detail as to the reasons for the need for the variance that we're requesting here. The property that we're involved with here is 9 acres on Captain's Neck. It's a substantially oversized lot for the under zoning here. It is essentially its own environment due to its size and location, except, or the only real property or neighboring property that would at all be impacted by the application that we have here today is the property directly to the south that the Morans own. I have spoken to Gil Flanagan today, who represents the Morans, and he has authorized me to tell the board that they are not objecting to this application, so that, as a matter of putting it on the record, that they are not opposing it. And he's authorized me to say that. The application we're seeking, the variance we're seeking, is a height variance under the accessory standards. The standard is 16 feet. We're asking for a variance to not exceed 23 feet in height for these two garages. Originally, the garages were designed to comply with the zoning standard of 16 feet. And in fact, the applicant had gone to the Architectural Review Board with that plan and was in conjunction with the approval of the main building that's being constructed at the site. On reflection, after going to the ARB, the proportions and the aesthetics of a 16-foot garage didn't work. it is just out of proportion to the architectural design and aesthetics of the property with the large house. And Mr. Keene is going to explain that and show you graphically about that. As a result, the application is to allow us the variance to have the 23 feet to make the buildings compatible and proportionately aesthetically and architecturally in line with the development of this property. This board in the past has granted similar relief in the Old Town subdivision on 4 parcels, parcels 6, 7, 8, and 9. In that case, all of those lots were 4-acre lots. They were oversized lots for their zoning district. And due to the architectural and aesthetic issues that were presented to this board by the applicant there, the board granted similar height variances to allow for a higher height for not only garages but also pool houses on the properties, to allow them to be in sync aesthetically with the main house on the property. Our rationale for this variance is essentially the same as what the board addressed in the Old Town cases, and I don't want to be redundant and say the same thing over again as to the aesthetic need for this. In our submittal to the board, we do evaluate the 5 factors that you're to consider under the statute and weighing whether or not a variance should be granted here. Just very, very briefly, the factor that impact on the community we've addressed is there really is none from locating these garages with the height they would be granted. We have the neighboring party not objecting to it and basically has no objections to it. And it really, because of the hedging and the screening of the property, that additional 6 feet won't be noticeable from the road, from the Moran's property in any event. The benefit to the applicant is that the property will be developed in an aesthetic and proportionate way and in keeping with the estate section of the village. The others are explained as well in my application, but if you have questions on the factors, I'll be happy to address them. But to save time, I'm going to ask Mr. Keene to address the board and go into the details of the aesthetic situation that's presented.
Good evening. I'm John Keene. We spoke at the working session about this project, and you had some concerns at that session, so I just wanted to kind of reiterate what Mr. Eisler said, in that you'd asked to kind of see some of the, can you all see that, or do I put it on the TV? What's better for you? Just put it on the table and they'll see it? Okay, so you can see it's a very large house, and the garages are behind that left wing where you can see the arch with the breezeway going through. So the garages are actually behind the house. You don't actually see them from the front. And as Mr. Eisler said, this is on 9 acres. So there's a lot of land between these, and there's a lot of there's a huge hedge between the neighbor and this property as well. This house also, house and garages sit a couple of hundred feet plus back from Captain's Neck with a huge stand of trees. So even in the winter, it's hard to see this. In the summer, you can't see it at all. At the working session, one of your requests was to see where the garage, where you'd asked what was upstairs. We said there was a storage area. Again, maybe I should put it up just like that. So you would ask where the staircase would go, and you can see on that, we'll just do an outdoor staircase going up to the upper area. And then the other question you had was, what is upstairs? And you can see right here, it's basically just like a loft. A staircase comes upstairs. There's a bunch of dormer windows, which are really for aesthetics more than anything else, and just one big open space, which will be used for storage. You'd also asked whether or not we were going to put any heating and air conditioning, and we had said yes, because this is he's got some very expensive cars, which is why he's building these. And so we're going to have radiant floor heat to keep it warm in the winter, and there'll be air conditioning for the summertime. And those were really the the questions that you had asked, and if I can answer anything else, I'd be happy to.
Going back to the
Do
rendering.
we have a copy of those plans? Did you-
Sure. Exhibit A.
But what, did you submit them to us?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, this was just done, this was just in response to the questions you had asked last.
Okay, but we don't have them. right? Hold on. You have them?
It didn't show the second floor, that was our question.
I know, but. I don't have it. You have it?
Oh, yeah.
No, not the second floor. I have that, I have what you have.
Right.
He just
He
added.
has it, we don't have it. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
This was the elevation, if you were looking for that, that was the elevation of the garage that I think I'm not sure what you're asking for.
I was asking for the new plans about upstairs.
Okay.
The stairs and that.
Oh, boy.
The stairs are on the exterior, you said.
Yeah, well, yes, correct.
And this is,
And this was what it looked like, and we're basically just putting the staircase in this covered area right
yeah.
there.
And both of them are the same, I assume.
Yes, both identical.
Okay.
But I don't know that we have a site plan, but from Captain's Neck to the house, there's actually a large group of
Trees.
trees.
Yes,
that-
very large.
So it's actually difficult to see.
You really can't, you won't be able to see it. I mean, I happen to be there today, and in the middle of the winter, we're building the house, and you can see something going on, but you really can't even see it. And in the summer, you won't be able to see it at all. I would say it's, how many feet back, would you guess?
May have it here.
Got to be in the hundreds.
At least, yeah, 200.
At least 200, maybe
plus.
more.
All right, so upstairs is storage, and you want some heat for cars.
Right?
We had a question as to whether you subdivided, and if you did, would that make it out of scale?
Well, I don't think,
Say.
it would not be able to be subdivided less than minimum 4 acres, no matter what. So I don't think my client has any intention of subdividing this property whatsoever, but even if he chose to do that, it would still end up being on a very large parcel, because it's a large house, and it would therefore dictate that it had to be on a large parcel. So I don't think that's probably in the future at all.
You agree with that, Mr. Brune?
I have a couple questions, but it's not so
If it's
so much I agree
if
with.
it's subdivided, will it be 4-acre subdivisions?
I believe it's in a 3-acre zone,
3
so it could be 3-acre lots. It all depends, but
But maybe
there's a
that
number of
house-
structures on this property. It would affect how you subdivide the property. The first question I have, though, is there any basement?
No.
And so I think it would be important for your architect to provide, you suggest that the scale is an issue, but what's the height of the existing dwelling that you're under construction? It complies to the code, right? No greater than 35 feet.
Yes, except it's a very, it's a large structure.
Large, not in height.
Not in height, it meets the height limit, but it's a very large home in square footage.
Right, so everywhere else in the village, that if you have a 35-foot height, you're expected to have a 16-foot high garage, correct? So you're proposing 2 garages, and so what's the floor area of each garage?
It meets the criteria of the code, I think it's 800 and,
And are there calculations somewhere in the documents on
I
gross
believe
floor
so.
area for the existing,
798 square
are
feet.
those calculations
It says it's on the
someplace?
survey,
I didn't
yes,
see
yes.
it.
There's a survey that's been submitted that has that on it.
So, the section that you're asking for from relief from also says that you can't have any below-grade cellar and no heating shall be installed in any part of the accessory building. And the building department has ruled in other cases that you can't have radiant heat in a garage.
Correct, and that's
And air
something,
conditioning.
that's something that came up at the working session, which is why I brought it up tonight, that we would want relief from that as well.
Was that noticed?
It was not noticed.
So if you're going to ask for relief from that, but, so why here and why not anywhere else in the village? Why wouldn't somebody, what's different about this property other than being 9 acres?
I think that's probably one of the largest driving forces, just like Mr. Eisler said, on other projects where it's been 4 acres, it has been granted, and I think that was due to the size of the properties as well. And this is obviously substantially bigger than 4 acres, so I think given the size of the property, the privacy that this property affords from all the neighbors, particularly with the large trees and the tremendous distance behind, back from the road, I don't think it affects any of the surrounding properties. And I think it's in keeping with what we did on the other projects.
So is there a restriction that this could never be subdivided?
I don't believe there is no restriction. I mean, I'm sure that if,
That goes to what your question was.
if you wanted to say you could never do it less than, let's say, 4 acres, I don't think there'd be a problem. I don't think my client has any intention of subdividing this property. But, obviously you never want to say never, because let's just say in 100 years from now, he decides,
It'll be
someone
sold.
says, right, and someone says, we're knocking all this stuff down because no one wants to afford it. You don't want to, but as long as the house is there, you could say it requires 4 acres with those garages.
So did you provide us with a copy of the existing permits or CO? I noticed you have an existing 1-story garage and workshop, and it indicates with a bedroom.
That was existing on the property when they purchased it.
And there's a certificate of occupancy for that?
Yes, there is.
And so you have 1 existing garage and you're asking for 2 more?
Correct. So it's a large family. The garage that you're speaking of right now has a lot of boating apparatus. They're large fishermen. They're all fishermen, and they've got fishing poles and kayaks and all that kind of stuff in there. This is really for the cars, the ones that we're asking for.
And there is information on the second floor, the floor area there? How
Yes.
much is there for storage?
Yes.
And there's no storage anywhere else? There's also a garage attached to the dwelling?
2-car garage attached. What happened, they lived in the home prior to, and if there was constantly cars all over the place outside, and the idea is to get everything inside. Number one, he collects cars, so he wanted a spot where he can put expensive cars inside, but also just in general, he said, I don't want the cars all parked outside. I want to have cars inside where they're kind of out of the way and everything is neat and clean and looks much nicer.
If I may just add another point in answering some of Mr. Bruin's questions, the massing of the large building and its relationship to the garages was, as I indicated before, an issue that was the basis for the variances in Old Town. This application will still have to go to the ARB if a variance were granted, with the height, and that architectural balance was an issue that the ARB had also addressed in the Old Town cases. And so there is a review board here that's going to look at the aesthetic rationale for the underlying variance as well, besides this board. And, they will look at more in depth into the actual comparing the garages and their height and their mass compared to the mass of the building, the main house. And in the case of Old Town projects, the ARB approved all of them because of this. The size of the buildings drive the size of the accessory buildings. So the pool houses as well as the garages were subject to these variances.
Did you go before them yet? Have you been into the ARB yet?
We were asked, it was originally, the main house went with garages, these 2 garages at 16 feet. And we were asked to come to the zoning board first with
So
this
you got the
variance.
sense that they would be in favor of the taller garages?
I got that sense, yes, but they also said, don't come here first, we want you to go to the zoning board first, and so we come to us, and they're going to basically, if you approve this, they will basically just focus in on the aesthetics of the whole thing. They might make us modify something, I can't say.
Okay, let's discuss the heating and cooling. Now, if this were a very large house who wanted a studio for artwork, large studio for expensive art, would we allow heating and cooling?
I would think so.
So maybe a swell car's art, you know?
These cars, if you put them into a garage that's not heated in January, you can do damage to the car.
I understand. Well, and you pointed out, I believe it's the summer that really gets them too.
Well,
The humidity.
Yeah, it's both. I mean, there's no doubt, as you just said, cars should not be they need to be in a climate-controlled atmosphere at all times.
We were in car stores in Bridgehampton, and this stuff doesn't exist. I mean, everything we had was done. And people were coming to us all the time looking for car storage, just is none.
No, that's why I mentioned it to you once.
Yeah.
There's a new business.
What you build a house with.
Exactly.
Do you have copies of the opinions where we approved
Old
the
Town.
height variances at Old Town? Can you submit those?
They have handwritten notations on the top of what the relief was granted. That was not part of their, that was me.
Here, I'll take that.
Oh, sorry. And you'll see when you look at those decisions, one of the controlling factors was this oversize of the lot. And that was one of the factors that the zoning board looked at. And here we have that times 2 plus.
How many garages were granted in those cases?
An extra detached garage, so it would be 6 cars, I guess.
And the pool houses were,
Pool house, 842.
Yeah, there was 3 pool houses, a garage. Don't
there was
remember all
additional
of
relief for breezeways, relief from these requirements of the breezeways as well. It was all driven by the aesthetic and the size of the property. Those were the factors that they were looking at.
So my hearing here is that this particular landowner happens to collect cars, and he wants to house them in the garage.
It's
Two extra garages. You already have 2 garages.
Right.
So he wants to he collects cars, and he wants to store them in a garage.
I don't want to say that these are just for collection cars. There will be some, obviously, I want to say collector cars that are expensive cars that you wouldn't want to leave outside. And then there'll also be cars that they're going to be using day to day that are just going to either be in the garage next to the house or extra cars that they just don't want to have outside. As I said earlier, in the past, all the cars are outside and getting filthy dirty, and it looks terrible when you pull up to the house and you see all these cars.
But it doesn't look terrible from the road because we can't see the road.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Right. Anybody else like to say anything further? Okay, so we are requesting anything additional? No.
Well, I think it would be important, number one, they haven't requested the relief on the heating. So if it's left the way it is, that it would have to be done without the heating. So unless they want to re-advertise and come back to the board at the next meeting with that request, you can consider you would have to do that. But I would also suggest that, you know, what's important here is the precedential value. Why should you have 23-foot high garages? Just because the lot is bigger? I think we need to be careful on how the board proceeds and make sure that we can distinguish this from other cases in the future. So it would be good for the things that were stated here, the attorney could put that in with in a memo form and assist the board in creating that record.
Well, we've already did this once down in Old Town.
We're kind of kicking it down the road to the ARB.
And I'm not exactly sure why you did it there. And there are certainly perhaps
Again, because of the
distinguishing
size of the
factors.
property and the size of the houses, and the fact that you can't see anything down there. You could walk along Old Town Road or
Captain's Neck,
up
you're not
Wicker
gonna see
Park,
it.
you're not gonna see a thing. You can't see anything here either.
So every 4-acre lot should be able to have a 23-foot
I didn't say that.
Well,
This
Possibly.
is a 9-acre lot. How many 9-acre lots do we have in the village left? A few.
right, and every 9-acre lot can have 4 garages.
We got the cars for them.
I mean, I'm just making sure you create a record that isn't going to be thrown back in your face.
I understand,
Everything we do gets thrown back on our face at some point.
I understand Mr. Bruin's points, but when looking at the height variance and the request for it, and if you are presented with facts that warrant a relief, the variances are granted for that reason. This is, as you just articulated in the Old Town case, you couldn't see it from off-site. They are large parcels. They are their own kind of environment. And maybe if the next guy has a 9-acre parcel and wants to have a height variance, he may need one as well. And if it doesn't impact the community, and those are some of the factors that, the statute requires us to balance here in the need versus the impact, the fact that there's no off-site environmental or other lifestyle impacts from this is a key factor that the zoning board took into account back in the Old Town situation and on any variance. So, yes, there may be another 9 or 6-acre lot in a 3-acre zone or 2-acre zone that, because of the size of the property and the size of the building that's going on it, a small accessory structure is out of aesthetic keeping with that. And I think that was at the core of the Old Town decision, and coupled with the fact that there's just simply no off-site impacts from this.
Would you agree not to subdivide it?
I think we'd agree not to subdivide it. Let's say, as I said, we'd agree to keep this on a 4-acre lot. I think something else that we should consider here is, let's just say you didn't grant this, and the client said, look, I still want my garages, so let me build let me just spin off 3 acres of this property, and I'll put up a whole big house with a bunch of garages connected to it, which would be approved by which would be all conforming. So I think as a community, we're better off probably having these garages than another house on the property. That's not his intention by any means. I think this is going to be less impactful than another house on the property. And so I think, it kind of.
Or if he subdivided, would he take them down?
Yeah, I think they'd be okay with that.
You have to understand that maybe that the 16-foot is to prevent gross massing in smaller areas. There's not a question of gross massing here because of
The size of it.
Can I ask you a question? What's the floor area? I'm just reading from the decision you gave me, and there's a limitation of 800 square feet.
You're 792. We're 792.
Survey says 895. That's the survey we have, so.
He's looking at the incorrect.
You got to go to a microphone. You're too far back to pick it up.
The original survey that went in with the application had the area of the garages was mistakenly typed on it, and we have submitted a corrected survey that you should have in your files, and it's under the 800 square foot requirement. And we're not asking for a variance for the area of the buildings.
If I could.
We couldn't close this because they have to re-advertise for the heating anyway.
Otherwise, your specific request was so specific to that subsection D that was in your application, A1D, which is only with respect to height.
And I'm fine with, if we can, I'd love to get this approved so we can move along and, as you said, not kick the can down the road.
Right.
And we will come back at a separate time to request approval if we need be for heating and air conditioning in the unit. But this way, at least we can get going with the foundations and keep things moving along on the project.
Thomas?
He did approve.
Thomas?
There's also a subdivision that couldn't be subdivided.
They couldn't be further subdivided, right?
Well, whatever it is, you have to submit it for the record. If it's in the file, that's fine. I haven't got
I
it.
just wanted,
Is it something you want to show them on there?
It's got a later date on it?
Yeah,
Or is
it's,
it the same thing that you had it earlier?
no, it was,
No,
this
this is a survey.
was given a while ago.
I'll
That
put-
one, I don't know how the village attorneys got that one. It was switched relatively quickly.
if you can see the, I don't know if you're going to be,
Turn that around towards the board.
these two buildings right here, you'll see the square footage is 798.21 for both of them.
And this was stamped in back in March, beginning of March.
And in the Old Town cases, there were actual variances for the area. Some of them were larger. And then they needed a variance for the square footage.
Yeah, that's true. We had both larger units and height.
Frank, I think it would be very helpful. The copy of the decision is one thing, but there's a lot of reference to information that we don't have. And just so that if we're going to rely on that, it should be something we can say is apples to apples.
Well,
You know, one of the things there, they said that was a unique subdivision. Lots couldn't be further subdivided. It was reduced density. That's not the case here.
well, I mean,
So I'm just saying that
But would-
it would be very helpful to see, and also what the board was looking at when you say comparison of height and mass and all that information that you think is important, which is the issue here that you're trying to present.
would we alleviate some of that concern if there was a condition that was agreed to that it wouldn't be less than a 4-acre parcel?
It's up to the board.
Well, I'm just asking that because
I thought we said that if we subdivided it,
They come down.
they'd come down. I thought we already crossed that bridge.
that was another proposal.
Well, if it's 9 acres, it's still going to be 5 acres, right? If you subdivide it, it's still pretty big.
I mean, I think that no matter what this,
Sorry?
It's a 3-acre zone,
it's 3 acre zoning, but I don't
But
think
if-
we would not be able to get 3 acres because the house is too large for 3 acres. So we'd have to be at least 4 or 5.
Like I said before, there's so many structures that you would probably, if you're going to subdivide, be removing something.
You'd have to, yeah, I mean. The garage is interesting enough, probably would end up going with the house, and the other lot would probably be over here someplace. But again, as you just said, we have a tennis court, we have a pool house, we have other structures over there anyway. So I don't think it's, I think, if we kept this on 4 or 5 acres, then I guess theoretically you could knock all this down and put another house up over there.
I'm not saying that you wouldn't get the height going forward. You'd have to reapply for variance.
Yeah, I understand.
Something like that.
I understand.
You just said that you were going to take them down if you subdivided it.
I don't think that'd be a problem. They're probably not going to come down in my lifetime, so.
Somebody else.
Somebody else's, exactly.
Okay, so you don't want to re-advertise for the heating at this point?
At this, we will do it at a later date. This way we can get going and we can build this, and heating and air conditioning comes in later anyway, so we'll, in the next month we'll be back
When you
in.
say radiant heat onto the floor, you won't pour a foundation.
I'm not going to get to that stage right away. I need to get the footings and the foundation and not the slab. That goes in later. That'll allow me to, really what I'm trying to do right.
I'm just following up. There was a recent case in the building department, specifically denied the applicant to do that, and he had to tear down the garage. So
No, we're not going to, right now, if I can just excavate that location, put in the footings, put in the concrete walls for the building, I can start grading and really, I'm trying to level the property right now, and that would be very helpful.
You can frame it without the floor, can't you?
We don't even put the floor in until after it's framed and the roof is on, because we don't want it raining on it, so that's down the line. So I have time to come back to you for that. Okay.
So we're lacking nothing for this application? Should we close for decision?
up to you guys.
Do so.
I move we close this application for decision.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Right.
Thank you.
Frank, I just want to make sure that, so there's a complete survey with the revised numbers on it in the record?
Yes. Didn't we file? This has been filed, and this got filed on March 12th, 2009. When has yours been filed?
They just put it in the, okay.
That's March 12th, it should be in your file.
March 28th.
It should be, yeah.
Is that March 28th?
Yeah, I got March 28th.
Well, that was the stamp.
Oh, yeah, that was the
Oh, that's true. But that's the one that you had. You had the up-to-date one, and we did not. Now we do.
Right.
You got it.
This is last dated 3/5/2019,
This is
on the bottom right.
on the survey, 312
So
revised. And it was, you found this one, right?
3/12.
You have
312 is the
312
date of the survey.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Can I have a copy of that?
Not this one?
No.
You want the one that's stamped?
Yeah, please.
Well,
You have it?
he wants it, he put it in the file.
It's a stamp.
Yeah, he wants it.
You can't have it.
Assuming there's more than one.
There's only one, it's stay in the file.
There you go in this file.
Huh?
You want something from this file?
Yeah, if there's more than one of those surveys that are dated
Oh, I don't know. I
3/12.
don't know.
We did, okay.
No.
I don't know. I didn't have one originally, so I do not have two, I don't think.
I'm heading something else up now.
Where's the date on it?
Bottom here.
Bottom right. Way on the bottom.
Is it his, for him?
It's right there, it's right on the front.
Should be bottom right.
March 12th one, if he wants.
I can take that back. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so moved.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
bye-bye.